ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
I am not going to give up on this project. This is going to have huge economic benefits for Tasmania right across every corner of Tasmania and build that aspiration. And you cannot put a value on keeping young people in Tasmania and building hope and aspiration.
Tasmanian Premier Jeremy Rockliff in the face of the latest blow to the Hobart Stadium and AFL expansion team, the Tassie Devils. What's happened now, you ask? Well, the state's Planning Commission has released its report into the venue and simply says it shouldn't be built. What don't they like? A lot. The size, the location, the cost. The report has phrases like disproportionately large and describes the venue as monolithic. Yikes. Is this a tipping point for the stadium and the AFL expansion team? A crash or crash-through moment? I'm Patrick Stack. This is ABC Sport Daily. Chris Rowbottom is a broadcaster with ABC Sport. He's been all over this story from the get-go. We actually spoke to him when the stadium essentially resulted in the dissolution of the state's parliament earlier this year. Chris, the Tasmanian Planning Commission has delivered its report and recommendation into what should happen at Macquarie Point. Can you give us the thrust?
Yeah, sure. So this is the culmination of a 12-month assessment undertaken as part of the Project of State Significance process. The Tasmanian Planning Commission, a special panel convened to assess everything that goes into potentially building a 23,000-seat roofed football stadium at Macquarie Point in Hobart, and that includes its urban form and heritage impacts and traffic management and things like stormwater and noise and lighting, and of course the big macro things like the cost and the social and cultural impacts and the broader impacts on the city of Hobart and whatnot. They handed down their recommendation today, and the recommendation was that the Macquarie Point Stadium project not proceed, and that was based largely on economic factors and also the size and the scale of the building in relation to where it's going to be built on the fringe of the city at Macquarie Point. So its urban form and its relationship with an area that has, a heritage history, and its height and its relationship with the nearby Hobart Cenotaph as well. Those were the two major things that went into the decision. There are a couple of other sort of very minor little bits and pieces, but it has been knocked back by the Planning Commission on those grounds.
Pretty significant. They don't like the size, the location, the cost, the sort of cultural aesthetic elements of it either. We know that this is just a recommendation. This commission report is not, a final say. So how is it being received then by both sides of the conversation? Those who already don't want the stadium and the government who are adamant that this thing can and will go ahead.
Yeah, that's a really important point that people who see the news around this report might not quite realise, that it's not a yes or a no or an approval or a non-approval. It's a recommendation, or in this case, a non-recommendation. The final say will be had in the state's parliament. Both houses, lower and upper, will get to have their say on whether or not this proceeds. And you're right, it's really interesting now how it's spun from both sides. So obviously, the people that don't want the stadium, the parliamentarians and people in the community, for them, this is the silver bullet. This is the stake through the heart of the stadium. This is the Planning Commission, an expert panel, 12-month assessment, coming back after assessing everything and saying that this project shouldn't proceed because it's too big, it's too tall, it's too bulky, and it's too expensive.
In March, the end of March 2025, the Planning Commission came out with its draft integrated assessment report, and that report made clear that the stadium was in the wrong place, was going to bankrupt the state, was going to impact on the state's credit ratings, it was going to have a major impact on heritage, including the cenotaph in Hobart.
From the government side of things, the spin there is more interesting. They're saying that, well, we knew it was big, we knew it was tall, we knew the impact that it was going to have on the city and its surrounds. And we knew that it was going to be very, very expensive as well. We're supportive of it then, we're supportive of it now. And a lot of the other issues that were raised in the broader report traffic and pedestrian movement and those planning condition type things, they're confident that all of those can still be finessed and mitigated and alleviated.
I thank the TPC for the work that they've done. They've said that the stadium is constructible. All the issues around noise, around transport, around safety can all be addressed. We vehemently disagree with the economic analysis. It's been massively underestimated in terms of the social and economic value of this project, and every single member of Parliament, as I've said, will have their say on this project.
They're going on as if it's business as usual. Where it'll get really interesting is the upper house independent members. It's all going to come down to 2 or 3 of them who are at this stage still undecided, but their decision is going to be informed by this report. Whether it's enough to sway them against, or if it's not enough that they hold the line, that's where it'll get really interesting a little later in the year.
Geez, that's high stakes. And I just wonder, to sort of deny a report like this from the state government, is that reckless, or is that what brave leadership is?
That's another key question, and that's something that people against the stadium will be hammering the government over. How can you make a decision that flies in the face of your expert state planning commission that recommends that you don't do this? How can you defy that order?
They need to read this report and think of the state's future, their family's future, our children's future, and whether we're going to bankrupt the state to build the Premier's stadium.
But what's at stake here? It's the Devils AFL club. The report doesn't say that the stadium can't be built. It doesn't say that there is a danger that it will sink into the earth or that it cannot be physically built on that site. It's a report that says that it probably shouldn't be built there, not that it couldn't be built there. And that's what the government are going to argue.
Well, the stadium, of course, can be built. There's intergenerational infrastructure, and we will ensure that we will get this done. We will build this stadium. Parliament will have their say.
That it can be built, that it's able to be constructed, and that we're just going to wear any negative impact that it has, because we're going to get our teams, we're going to get events, we're going to get all this economic stimulus. So that's how it's going to go down. The Planning Commission, of course, and the other side will argue, well, there won't be economic stimulus. The Planning Commission says there won't be the economic stimulus that you say that there will be. So there's going to be this back and forth over the next couple of months until it is finally resolved in the Parliament.
Gee, it's got to be creating some headaches for Andrew Dillon and the team at AFL head office. I mean, publicly, they've been steadfast that the licence is for a new stadium with a roof. But given what they've already invested in terms of the people, the planning, do you think that they would really pull out if either House of Government, if the Tasmanian Parliament rejected this stadium, even if it was to, say, lose its roof?
It's an interesting one. I haven't seen any evidence that would suggest that the team continues to go ahead without this stadium being built.
And an important part of the Tasmanian Task Force bid for the licence, and what underpinned the business case behind it and the competitiveness of the team was that there would be a new state-of-the-art stadium at Macquarie Point with at least 23,000 capacity with a roof. And that was part of the bid that was put forward.
The roof is interesting because it actually wasn't really... It was discussed in the Planning Commission report and by the Planning Commission. But what they didn't do was say, well, you know, if you take the roof off, then you have a lower stadium that doesn't have the dominating impact that it has, and then maybe you can proceed with it. They assessed the project as what it was and what was put in front of them, and that was the stadium with the fixed roof. So there's actually no assessment as to what a stadium without the roof would be. The other thing with the roof is that it's crucial, as the government would say and the club would say as well, to the whole business case of the thing. It means you can have those events that you couldn't otherwise have. It gives you security over the weather. It means you can sell tickets in advance without weather concerns and all of these things.
Look, I'm a believer in the roof because it also adds to the business case. Look, I've spoken about football today. I've spoken about hospitality today. I've spoken about many other opportunities, but we're missing out on huge opportunities when it comes to events attraction to Tasmania.
I think the roof is going to stay, And I think the condition from the AFL will remain that stadium has to be passed for the club to exist. Because the other thing is, there's a practical thing here and a practical element that there's no alternative. There's Bellerive Oval where the team can play games and will play games in its first year, but it has 12,000 seats, and you simply can't compete economically off the field playing out of a stadium week after week as your primary home venue in your capital city with just 12,000 tickets to sell. You only need more. And that's where the new stadium comes into play. So there are practical elements as to why that is in the licence agreement and that it does form part of the business case. And I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary that would suggest that the AFL would continue on with Tasmania without that stadium, because I actually don't think the club would be viable without it. And that's certainly the argument from the club as well.
Just on the two aspects of cost and time frame, I'm just wondering, given the sort of slowness or speed of the execution, is that starting to become a problem? Like, does this report impact the pace of the execution and the cost of the execution?
Yeah, so the government never wanted to go into the project of state significance process. They were essentially forced into it. They had a couple of members a couple of years ago leave the party, go and sit as independents, and in exchange for giving the government back their supply and confidence, they said, no, the stadium has to go through this particular extensive planning process, the project of state significance process. And as a result of that, that comes with certain things. It comes with a 12-month assessment. It comes with public hearings. It comes with this level of scrutiny. It has to go through both houses of parliament. That takes a long time. It takes a lot of money. Now, what the government wanted to do mid-year was pull out of the project of state significance and instead go through the path of special legislation, drafting enabling legislation, putting that in front of the parliament and getting it through that way, circumventing the process. That was due to happen in about July. Then we had a no confidence motion in the Premier by the Labor opposition. That triggered an election, and that election meant that chance for that special legislation to be tabled and to be voted on fell by the wayside. So we went back into the POS process. Had that legislation been voted on, had that had passed, then we'd be sort of here now looking at maybe tendering out for a builder and maybe turning over soil by Christmas. That was the hope of the government. It's now going to be more like early to mid next year. There has been a cost increase on the official figures, and the government is claiming, whether or not this is true, that is a direct result of these delays, that the more you delay this thing, the more it's going to cost, and that cost rise is a result of that.
So much from an Australian sport history perspective, hinging on just a couple of votes in state parliament coming up. Chris Rowbottom, thanks for pulling it all apart for us.
No problems at all, thank you.
Headlines. Jess Hull has taken bronze in the 1500 at the World Champs. The Olympic silver medalist laying it all on the line, chasing all-time great Faith Kipyegon. And the girl from the Gong nearly dropped off the podium entirely in pursuit.
It's going to be oh so close. Jess, yes. Hull has hung on for third.
You've got to love that she risked missing out on a medal entirely in order to chase an all-timer. Here was Hull on fighting off Nelly Chepchirchir for bronze.
Sort of when she loomed up next to me at the bell and tried to box me in, I knew what she was doing. Like it was going to put her on the podium, but it was also going to protect Faith to let her get away. And I had to put that elbow up and be like, no, not right now. Like I want to have a chance to fight Faith. And with 250 to go, she started to pull away, but I was pretty tough around the bend. And in that straight, I was like, I'm not losing a medal now.
Sadly for men's fan favourite Peter Bowl, the West Aussie failed to get past his heat in the 800 metres. He faded to finish fourth, and his time was not enough to scrape into the semi-finals. Cricket, where the long winding marathon race to open the batting for Australia at the Ashes continued in the last 24 hours. First, Sam Constas peeled off a century in a session for Australia A against India A before Marnus Labuschagne rattled off a ton of his own against Victoria for Queensland in the domestic one-day competition. Rugby, where James O'Connor won't be taking on the All Blacks next weekend in NZ. The 35-year-old has to go to UK to play for his club team Leicester. The veteran posted on Instagram from the airport ahead of his flight with a cryptic hint that he may be back for the second Bledisloe Cup game in Perth. I'm Patrick Stack. This is ABC Sport Daily, produced by Poppy Penny. Thanks to SBS and 3AW for the extra audio used in this episode.
Discover more great ABC podcasts, live radio and exclusives on the ABC Listen app.